the next speaker.
We will be listening to Dr. Mada Helou about climbing the leadership ladder. Dr. Mada Helou has earned her Bachelor of Science degree in biology with honors from the University of Cincinnati and her medical degree from the Wright State University Boonshoft School of Medicine. She also completed her training in anesthesiology and critical care medicine at the Cleveland Clinic, where she received the Excellence in Teaching Award upon graduation. She is board certified in both fields. She also joined the University Hospital Cleveland Medical Center staff, and she is an associate professor at the Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine. She has served as Associate Program Director of Anesthesiology and Medical Student Clerkship Director. She now actually also serves on multiple education committees for the Residency and Critical Care Medicine Fellowship, as well as Hospital and National Society. We'll be listening to her now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Sorry for that Zoom bar that was in everyone's way. So as was previously introduced, my name is Mada Helou. I'm a program director for anesthesiology, and I'm an associate professor of anesthesiology at the Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine. So first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for having me here today. This is the first time I have the honor of presenting in my home country. So thank you so much for having me. I'd like to start by thanking Dr. Vanda Abirad for giving me this opportunity, as well as Dr. Christian Rufayed, who helped introduce me to the team at LSA. And finally, Dr. Hassan Kanaza, who has not joined us today, but he is the past chairman at the AUB and helped talk me through some of this content to make it relevant to our Lebanese audience. So without further ado, what is this subject and why are we discussing it? So the goal of this topic is to introduce the listeners to common workplace issues in the United States, but also to compare it to our Lebanese work environment to kind of help us apply things a little bit differently where we work. So the learning objectives are going to be describe the 4 generations in the workplace according to American definitions that loosely parallel international definitions. To discuss potential areas of conflict among members of different generations, and to talk about solutions for those conflicts, and finally to reflect on the benefits of having intergenerational collaboration, meaning teams that work on projects from every generation. So how will we be approaching this topic? So the first thing that we'll talk about is the context of how I got into leadership and just the story from my very early times and how I realized this topic to be important in the flourishing of my own team. And then we'll look at some cases that are very specific to this topic. So first and foremost, my context, my setup for being involved in the leadership arena was in the course of being a program director. When I took over about 5 years ago, our program was on ACGME warning. For those who are unfamiliar with ACGME, it's the national accrediting body for residency programs in the United States. And so our program was essentially in trouble and needed a lot of work. And I was an inexperienced attending. I was only less than 2 years into practice. And so I really had to focus a lot to be able to make the residency program and the education better. So the main issue that we faced was a lack of faculty and resident engagement. The faculty and the residents were not working well together, and there was a lot of misunderstandings between the older and the younger generation at work. So our immediate goals as a residency team were to increase faculty and resident engagement in the work and with one another to improve the wellness of the residents and the faculty, thereby improving the program, ultimately with the goal of improving the future in the long term. So in order to do that, we needed a very clear vision of what we wanted done for the program. We also needed a mission strategy, essentially, to accomplish that vision. And we also needed to retreat a little bit to reflect on our values and what was important for us as a team. So that was the stage, a struggling program and generations that didn't get along together. So I started doing some research on this topic, especially having been brought up in a Lebanese household. I was very aware as a younger team member of how I needed to be treated. So I thought maybe there's something that we can look into here to make these teams work better. So what are the various generations? So we call baby boomers those who are senior leaders in our hospitals, age 59 to 77. The generation really above them isn't in the workplace any longer. Generation X is about age 43 to 58, so middle management and folks who are just starting to take on leadership positions. And millennials are age 27 to 42. So truly all of our residents in this moment and all of our junior faculty. And then the post millennials or Gen Z are the ones who are currently in medical school and will be coming to us soon. And that's kind of just the terminology that we'll be using for the rest of the presentation. So as I researched this, I looked into a lot of different workshops from the organizational development world and some of the literature that was published in medical education. And I looked at some surveys. So one of the surveys asked, how is your generation unique to the generations? Millennials felt like they were better with technology use and they were much more open-minded than other generations. The baby boomers felt like they had better respect in the workplace, better morals and loyalty, and also better work ethic. And the middle generation had a little bit in common with both. They felt like they were a bit more conservative. They were better at technology like millennials, but they felt like they had a better work ethic and were more respectful like the baby boomers. And again, this is how people self-identify. It comes as no shock that every generation felt like they were a bit smarter than the other one. And that's not shocking considering human nature. The other survey was how did each generation see themselves at work? So millennials felt like they were very creative. They thought outside the box. They were open to new research, open to new ideas. They wanted to try something new in the workplace. Baby boomers, on the other hand, felt that they had better communication skills, that they could speak with people more effectively, and they were better at handling a crisis. And Gen X felt like they took extra time to finish a job. They were more competent. And when you look at their descriptors, pardon me, they identified more with the older generation. And this just begs the question, the longer we've been in the workplace, do we start to think in a certain way? Or is it truly that Gen X and baby boomers are just a lot more similar in the workplace? But the big thing to highlight is that millennials felt like they were a lot more creative. And all of my residents were millennials, and I felt like everybody else needed to really understand what the young generation valued in the workplace, what the residents valued, so they could get along with them to create a better residency program. So millennials value a flat corporate structure. Meaning they don't want to knock on a million doors to be able to get to the boss. They want to get straight to the boss and be able to solve things quickly. They want transparency from management. When it comes to their salary, their paycheck, they want to know that they're being paid for the work that they're getting done, and they want to understand how. They like feedback in the moment, and feedback isn't just what they did wrong, it's also how they can improve so that they can get better in the workplace and provide up-to-date patient care. They're also very team-oriented, and they like working in groups, not just in an individual fashion. So you can imagine with all of these differences that the generations might not get along very easily, and some work was needed to be done in that area, especially for the program to take off. So researching a little bit more, there are many areas where different generations can encounter arguments, but 4 of the areas where we experienced our issues were around communication, teamwork, training, and work ethic. And there were a lot of workshops in the organizational development world and a lot of information that helped us educate our attending and resident cohorts on these various areas of concern. So just reviewing this briefly before we talk about some more real life examples, communication was a big one. Millennials like to get a lot done by text message, by acting quickly, by kind of informal communication. And baby boomers preferred face-to-face phone calls, being in the room. It gave them a sense of being respected. Gen X is something in between. They could get a lot done electronically, more by email and longer written communication. As far as teamwork was concerned, in the older generations, the boss made the decision and that was that. For Gen X, the expert in the room decided, but for millennials, they really wanted teamwork and consensus by all group members before they were comfortable with a new plan or a policy. And the millennials also value training. They want to do the most up-to-date things in research. They want to constantly be trained, and it's almost expected. Gen X kind of shares that opinion, and that training is necessary for all of us to stay relevant. But for the older generation, there was not much of an emphasis on training. Training in new areas was considered a plus, but not necessary. If there's a new article out there, it's good to know about it, but we don't necessarily need to implement it. That's not the attitude amongst the younger generation. And finally, work ethic, and this pertains more to the USA than Lebanon, but the older generation in the USA really spent a lot of time at work and took their work home with them. And the younger generations valued a little bit more flexibility. And again, this is USA centric and our experience. So to bring this all together, how is this information relevant in a practical way to get attendings and residents working together to make the program better? So essentially, we had to first of all paint a vision of the program. Where do we want it to go? We needed the faculty to understand what the goals were before we could get them to participate in helping us. So a sample vision would be, where are you going? I portrayed it here by Bora Bora, but really a Bora Bora for a residency would be everybody graduating with POCUS certification from ASA, graduating with basic ECHO certification, graduating and becoming leaders in their workplace within the first, second years, on postgraduate surveys. That's kind of an example. We also needed a mission. How are you going to accomplish that vision? How are you going to get to Bora Bora? Is it canoe, private jet, airplane? So the same thing needed to happen for the program. It's great you want to do all of these cool things, but how exactly are you going to get it done? So we created a program that aimed to have faculty and residents work together, work out their differences, get together on the same group, and help us improve the residency program, because there was nothing that I could do alone as an individual to make a whole program better. I needed a team and I needed everyone to be involved. And so what we did is we sat down with the residents, we talked to them about how they wanted their ideal program to look like. And we gathered all of their feedback about what they felt wasn't working, what they felt was working, and how we could make the program a top-notch program. And after we did that, we had a vision of where we wanted to go that was informed by the residents. It was informed by the younger generation. It wasn't just the older ones making decisions. It was a hip, cool, like up-to-date vision, if you will. And then I, as the program director, was responsible for creating a mission. I was responsible for creating a strategy for how to achieve this. And so in doing so, we came up with 16 focus areas of projects that needed to be worked on. Some were academic, some related to wellness, some related to just systems improvement. For example, the creation of an acute pain medicine regional anesthesia service. We had a lot of regional anesthesia, but we didn't have a formal service. And so the practices, the medical practices were not at top notch and where they should be. And that's a very basic standard of care in the United States, is having a good regional anesthesia service. So there was a lot that we needed to fix in the system in order to make the residency better. But when everybody was helping, it was very easy to accomplish. So we put these 16 focus areas in front of the faculty and the residents, and we created a team. The basic team was a senior attending, a junior attending, a senior resident, and a junior resident. So there was a member from every single level. And we talked to them about how to work together well through their differences. And we allowed them to pick an area from one of these 16 projects where they could work together. In return, we asked that they get non-clinical time to work on this project. And they also were expected to publish this project at either a regional or a national conference. And so that was an expectation in return for the time. And then we also gave them some money in the form of a stipend to be able to attend the conference. And so all with one stone, we were accomplishing helping the residency get better, helping the hospital system get better, publishing, and teaching folks to work together as a team and harnessing their strength and their work, essentially, their good work for the program. So we allowed the teams to volunteer for the projects, and everything got done, and it really was great. In less than 2 years later, we resolved all of our citations, and our program was in excellent standing. So this is just a story of how something like this worked. I guess the next question is, how do we make all of this relevant to Lebanon? We're unique. Our culture is super unique. And how do we do this? How do we take this home to Lebanon? So all of these things I would say do apply in Lebanon. Everything that we're working on in the United States does apply to our Lebanese lifestyle. And I think, you know, one thing that's amazing about Lebanon is that we always know how to stay relevant. We know how to stay young, how to stay forward thinking, and how to work and stay up to speed with some of the best places in the world. And I do believe that we can continue to do that as a team. And so I pulled some specific cases from my experience here that I do believe will apply very fully to our work environment in Lebanon. Case number one, Dr. George is a 32-year-old resident who started rotating in a medium-sized hospital after having been in an academic center. So the academic center is the base, and the community hospitals in the area are kind of the smaller, medium-sized hospitals. So our resident goes to the community hospital and he starts observing these issues. His senior attending intubated an unstable C-spine with a glide scope instead of using an awake fiber optic. So even though he knows and he's learning that the awake fiber optic is the standard of care. His other attending and the surgeon refused to allow regional anesthesia for an arm fracture. We've always done this case under general. We don't need regional anesthesia. And then he's expressing frustration. So how do we have this conversation with the senior attending? How do we have this conversation with the surgeon that, yes, we've always done it this way, but there are newer studies, there are national practice guidelines, international practice guidelines that are telling us that we need to work together to do things a little bit differently. How do you introduce this conversation? So do you have a conversation from your chairman to their division chief, from your chairman to the hospital chairman? Do you discuss with administration the necessity of improving this, right? And so what we have here in the US is we have committees for either ERAS protocols, which are rapid recovery after surgery, or we develop service line protocols that teach the whole division the importance of standardized practice. And so we'll come up, for example, the C-spine issue, we'll come up with a protocol for unstable C-spine. We'll communicate it in the faculty meeting and in the rounds and get everybody on the same page about what the department's expectations are for the management of a very specific disease. And we do it step by step until we've covered all of the important topics and we make sure that we're up to speed with international guidelines. Case number two, communication and teamwork. Dr. Gabriel works in a large academic center. She is interested in research, but has not yet learned the methodology. The seniors in her group publish together and the juniors are left to publish alone. This, I think, is something that definitely happens in some of the smaller institutions. And the question I'd like to pose here is, what's the potential benefit for all parties of collaborating across generations in this particular scenario? And I will say, I did my training at the Cleveland Clinic, and I had the privilege of working with their outcomes research department, which is a huge department just specialized for anesthesia research. It's literally a fantastic place to gain exposure to the methodology of research. And the strategy they had there was very well divided labor. The senior staff set the idea for the project, they set the strategy, they told the juniors, this is how you get this done. And the juniors were full of energy, but they didn't know how to direct it. So they would crank out most of the hard labor. They would be doing all the writing, all the strategizing, etc. And so what ended up happening was the juniors cranked out large volume work. The seniors did overall strategy. So the junior got first author, which means you did most of the writing, and the seniors got last author, which is the most important position that shows that you're the senior person that's overlooking all of these projects, right? And by doing that, a higher volume of papers was published overall, and both the seniors and the juniors got way more publications than if the seniors were publishing alone and the juniors were publishing alone. So rather than having seniors put each other's names on articles, it actually worked better to have a collaboration with the juniors. And that's just an idea I want to toss out there for our work environment in Lebanon. Case number three. Dr. Michael is a junior hire in a medium-sized hospital, so think a community hospital, not a large academic center. He takes more overnight call and late duties than his senior colleagues. He also generates more revenue from the caseload he covers. However, he is paid less. How is a discussion around equitable pay initiated? And so this was an issue that we had when I first started at my institution and my new chairman came in, is essentially the people who generated more clinical units in the OR got paid more, but we had no control over what OR we could go to. So it's a very similar issue to this case. Even though I was knee deep in blood and doing a liver transplant, I was getting paid way less than an ENT gentleman who was flipping vocal cord polyps. And so it was incredibly not equitable. And so people started to leave. And that's a very big reality. So as our chairman was facing a mass exodus from the department, he had to revamp how pay was done. And so there was a big discussion in our faculty meetings about how fair pay was going to happen. And we really did change the structure. Now, I realize I'm running up against time here, so I just want to take an extra minute and a half. I'm so sorry. I will say the final thought that I just want to leave everyone with is that we all lead our own initiatives. Even if we don't have a title, we are either leading a team, we're leading those in our surroundings, we're leading our families. All of us are leaders in some capacity. And which type of leader do we really want to be is the main question here. The lens that I want to leave this talk with, and it's just some things for us to consider in Lebanon. Can generational theory apply to our unique Lebanese circumstances? Can we leverage more interaction between generations to improve education, to improve our patient care delivery, and just to elevate the overarching level of our organizations? We were some of the best hospitals in the Middle East, and I think we can still be one of the best, even though there are many great places across the Middle East now. I think that we really can stay relevant, and it's not all just in the science. Some of it is in how we treat each other and how our teams function. And my dad loved Lebanese poetry. He taught me a lot of it. So I find it very fitting to end on a poetic note here. But really, what if it's not just better science? What if it's being a better person in the workplace that really elevates patient care, that elevates team performance, that elevates education, that elevates our work environment? What if we worked together more and that ended up making us more happy? We should consider that option as well. There's so much more to be gained from collaboration. And again, thank you so much to all of you for having me here. It's really such an honor to be speaking at home. Thank you.